Easy to stop noticing cars, buses, and parking lots because they feel so normal. But that normal-looking traffic is actually a clue about the Anthropocene, because it shows how deeply human life depends on fossil fuels. My question is, how does car and bus use at UConn show the campus's dependence on fossil fuels, and what does that reveal about UConn's place in the Anthropocene? I chose this topic because I see it every day. Cars fill the parking lots. As you can see over here, there's so many parking lots and they're always all full. But imagine all of those cars running at the same time, thousands of trips back and forth, releasing carbon emissions into the air. Buses also move students around campus, and traffic is a part of the background of college life. But when you look at it more closely, every one of those vehicles is connected to burning fuel. And burning fuel is one of the biggest ways humans change the atmosphere. Fossil fuel combustion releases carbon dioxide and other combustion products that become a part of the Earth system, which is exactly the kind of human signature the Anthropocene is about. One Anthropocene curriculum article, The Anthropocene Signal Amidst the Noise, explained that since the mid-20th century, 90% of all carbon used to date by humans was consumed to drive the huge recent industrial development. In another article, Combustion Products as Markers for the Anthropocene, explains that black carbon inventory indicate major shifts in the geographical distribution of emissions. These emissions sourced in Europe and North America, dominating from the mid-19th century through to the last few decades of the 20th century. Together, these articles show that emissions from vehicles at UConn are not just local pollution, but they're part of a global human signal that has increased sharply in the Anthropocene. This matters at UConn because transportation is not a small issue here. The university has transportation policies focused on lowering emissions, but it's also been adding electric and hybrid buses as parts of its sustainability efforts. This shows that UConn is trying to move away from the fossil fuels, but it also shows that the campus is still in transition. If the university is investing in a cleaner transit, that means that vehicle emissions are a real problem that need to be reduced. My own observations support that too. The campus is built around cars in lots of ways. Parking lots, roads, shuttle stops, and delivery vehicles, and commuting traffic all show that fossil fuel use is built into everyday campus life. Even if one car seems small, the total effect of thousands of trips adds up to a lot of carbon emissions. That is how a campus becomes part of the Anthropocene, not just through one giant event, but through everyday systems that depend on fossil energy. One useful way to think about this is through the carbon cycle. Normally, carbon moves slowly through living things like soils, oceans, rocks, and the atmosphere. But when humans burn fossil fuels, we move ancient carbon from underground into the atmosphere really quickly. The Anthropocene Signal Amidst the Noise article explains that fossil fuel combustion has caused a first-order exchange in the carbon cycle, and that atmospheric carbon dioxide shows a clear human fingerprint. The article also points out that the carbon isotope shift called the Suess effect helps track this change. I also want to connect this to the water cycle. A warmer atmosphere can hold more water vapor, which affects evaporation, clouds, and precipitation. This means that fossil fuel emissions do not just stay in the air as pollution, they can also influence how water moves through the Earth system. So cars and buses on campus are part of a chain that reaches far beyond the campus roads. For one of my course images, I used a water cycle diagram that shows a flux in from rainfall in rivers and a flux out through evaporation. As you can see in the diagram, the ocean is acting like a reservoir. Water comes in through rainfall in rivers and leaves through evaporation. If more water enters than leaves, the reservoir grows. This matters for my topic because fossil fuel emissions from cars and buses add carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, which can change warming, evaporation, and precipitation. So just like this diagram shows a shift in water balance, campus transportation shows how human activity can shift Earth systems too. For another image, I used a course graphic showing a human-made political boundary cutting across a natural landscape. As you can see in this image, The border is a straight human line placed across a natural landscape. This matters for my topic because it shows that humans build systems that do not follow natural boundaries. At Yukon, roads, parking lots, and bus routes do the same thing on a smaller scale. They organize space for cars and fossil fuel use, even though the climate and water systems underneath are still natural Earth systems. So this image helps show one of the basic ideas of the Anthropocene, that human activity shapes the landscape itself. As you can see in my drawing, cars and buses on campus burn fossil fuels that releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. That extra carbon dioxide traps more heat, which warms the air and affects the water cycle. With more warming, more water evaporates, clouds form differently, and precipitation patterns can change too. So, parking lots and roads are not just transportation spaces, they are part of a much bigger Earth system cycle where human activity is changing the atmosphere, the carbon cycle, and the water cycle all at once. Here you can see the fossil fuels that are used to power this car that could potentially leak out into the soil and go into the ocean, and you can also see the car harming the environment more directly using combustion that releases carbon dioxide into the air, which also ends up precipitating into the ocean. Yukon also gives a good example of why this matters locally. The university has public sustainability messaging around climate and energy, and it's been discussing carbon neutrality and cleaner transportation options. That means that the campus is trying to respond to the problem, but the need for those changes also proves that the problem is real. In that sense, Yukon is a small example of the larger Anthropocene, a place where human systems are changing Earth systems in ways we can actually observe. What Yukon shows is that the Anthropocene is not only something happening in glaciers, oceans, or faraway industrial sites, but also visible in a campus parking lot, a shuttle stop, and a line of cars waiting to move through daily life. Yukon is trying to become more sustainable, but the current transportation system still shows how deeply fossil fuels shape modern life. This is why I think car usage at Yukon is a strong example of the Anthropocene in everyday space. And here are my sources. Thank you.